Hello there, Professor Dyer here, talking about research in human development and family science. So, HDFS is not just common sense. It requires the use of science to understand human development and close personal relationships. But why does it sort of feel like common sense? I have three answers to this question. There are three known cognitive biases that essentially all humans are subject to. And these things lead us to a false sense of confidence regarding things that we think we know about human development and family relationships. Let's take them one at a time. Naive realism is the conviction that one's own observations about the world are obviously correct and unbiased. We all have the sense that when we go through the world, we are observing it exactly as it happened, and we have the ability to restrain ourselves from being swayed by our subjective biases and feelings, and we just don't think we're biased. But we do look around us and we think other people are. We're very sensitive to noting bias in other people, but we tend not to think that we are. And it's a naivete about the way reality works. We naively believe that we're capable of being objective observers. And so when we see something, we trust that we saw it accurately, exactly as it happened. And if someone else sees it differently or interprets it differently or has a different opinion about it, then we think something's wrong with them. Maybe they're not very bright, or maybe they are being kind of swayed by some kind of terrible prejudice or bad feelings about someone else, and they just can't seem to rein in their subjectivity. But we naively believe that we can rein in ours, so our perspective is right, and anyone else who disagrees with us has something wrong with them. I'm reminded of the comedian George Carlin, who said, "Have you ever noticed anybody driving slower than you is an idiot, and anyone faster than you is a maniac?" That is naive realism. The second thing that happens in the way human beings think about the reality is hindsight bias. Once we know the answer, we believe that makes so much sense that I probably have known it all along. We convince ourselves that we knew that. Duncan Watts has written a wonderful book about common sense entitled "Everything is Obvious Once You Know the Answer." This is a well-documented phenomenon among humans that when we learn something, we believe we've always known it. So what happens in HDF classes on a college campus is that people sit in the class and they learn things that, truthfully, they did not know before. But because of hindsight bias, they come to believe that they had always known that. And then, so even at the end of an HDFS class, a student might say, "Yeah, that class was pretty much common sense." And what they really mean by it is, now that I've studied it, I can see how it's true and helpful and useful. But hindsight bias makes us think that we always knew that stuff. And if we always knew it, then of course it must be common sense. We probably didn't need the class anyway. The third problem with human kind of cognitive processing that leads us to believe that perhaps everything related to development and relationships is just common sense is the familiarity heuristic. That everyday experiences are subjectively immediate, meaning they're very close to us, very relevant to us. And so the way we subjectively go through the world, that feels very, very close and familiar and right at our fingertips. When we experience things that are subjectively immediate that way, we tend to think we understand them, even when we don't really. And I encourage you to think about any household appliance. This image is about the internet. How does the internet actually work? If you had to explain it to someone who maybe landed here from a different planet or something, how does this internet work? Most of us would end up saying something like this, well, we have this device in our hands and the internet exists out there, and some kind of magic happens that lets us access it, but we don't really understand how it works. Think about things that you use frequently, like a refrigerator. How exactly does that work? And if you had to explain it to someone who had never seen a refrigerator before, my guess is that most of us, even though we use it every day and we feel like we understand the machine, can't really articulate how it works. But when something is very familiar to us, it feels subjectively as if we do understand it. So this all really comes down to personal experience. When people say something is common sense, what they really mean is that they have personal experience with that subject. Human development, close personal relationships, all humans have personal experiences with these things. And so they feel very familiar and sort of obvious to us. As a result of the cognitive biases that we have just talked about, humans tend to confuse personal experience with deep knowledge and understanding. Furthermore, there are other cognitive biases that sometimes lead us to make incorrect, false conclusions about the meaning of our personal experiences. We'll save that for another day, but it is possible to be very confident that you know something, and for that thing that you think you know to be totally wrong about it.